Well, hello and welcome to Bingewatch, the podcast where we take a look at the hottest new TV and film releases on streaming television platforms. I'm Hannah Fernando, the group editor of Woman and Woman and Home magazine.
And I'm Ian McEwan, writer on TV and Satellite Week, TV Times and What's on TV magazines. And today we're looking at the new releases for the week starting Friday the 5th of May 2023, including the Netflix Bridgerton sequel Queen Charlotte, and South London rom-com Rya Lane on Disney+.
We'll also be checking out dystopian, subterranean, sci-fi thriller Silo on Apple TV+, and the moving Disney+ wartime drama A Small Light. But first, Ian, what is in the news?
Sylvester Stallone will star in and produce Prime Video's action comedy Never Too Old to Die about a Cold War veteran who investigates a murder in a retirement home for secret agents. What else is in the news, Hannah?
Whatever next. In Paramount Plus's film Little Wing, Succession's Brian Cox will play a man who forges a powerful connection with a troubled young girl who tries to steal one of his racing pigeons. Well, that was next. Right up there.
Well, I know I say this quite often, but it is a very good week and plenty of variety too. We have a period drama, we have a wartime true story, we have a rom-com, and we're going to start, of course, with a sci-fi. It's on Apple TV Plus, arriving on Friday. It's called Silo, and here's a clip.
We do not know why we are here. We do not know who built the silo and why we are underground. We only know the world outside our sanctuary is death.
10 episodes of this one, Hannah. You get your first 2 on Friday, and then they will be arriving weekly. I've watched a couple of episodes, and I must say I really liked it. So the question I have to ask you is, what would life be like if we could never venture above ground? Well, I live in a basement flat, so it's something that I'm familiar with. That's the premise of this sci-fi. It's set in this underground community of 10,000 people. So it's kind of post-apocalyptic. We assume this huge underground structure has been built. It goes down so many stories with a big spiral staircase. And we know that there's been an unsuccessful rebellion in this community, as a result of which all history has been erased. So no one really knows who built the silo. What were we doing before we were in the silo? What we also know is that if anyone goes outside into the outside world above ground, and you can choose to do that, we see that they collapse and die within a matter of minutes. So it's a very interesting setup. And in episode 1, it's based on some novels actually by a chap called Hugh Howey. And in episode 1, we meet the sheriff, the lawman, Holston Becker. He's played by David Oyelowo, who is always very good, and his wife Alison, played by Rashida Jones. And this is quite a nice idea. So in this society, you have to get permission to try to conceive, to try for a baby, and if you do get permission, you only have a certain number of days within which it can happen, and after that you have to stop trying, or your birth control is put back in. Yeah, they're very keen to have a baby. She works in IT, and Tim Robbins, actually, haven't seen him for a while. He plays the head of IT in this underground world. She's called out on a job, and she discovers some things that make her start to question everything she's been told about life in the silo. It's really well done. They've created this whole underground world and it's quite a retro culture, because as you can imagine, if we went to live underground, we'd basically been living on what we already had, so everything would be kind of recycled. So the people in this society who can kind of mend things, mend old technology, are highly prized. What's unusual about it is that the main 2 characters that you meet in episode 1, well, by the end of the episode, it looks as if we're not going to hear from them again. Whether that's the case, I don't know. But from episode 2 onwards, there's this engineer called Juliet, who is going to be digging into the world of the silo and trying to find some answers. Okay, so I think they've created this very convincing world with all of its sort of commerce and all of its rules and its law enforcement and its IT. I loved the premise. I thought the performances were great. It's also got Harriet Walter, who's been doing some great stuff recently as Martha, who is one of these people who can repair old tech. So yeah, I really bought into it, and I would definitely carry on watching. I know this isn't really your cup of tea, Hannah, but what did you think?
It's like my worst nightmare. Do you know what? I mean, I say my worst nightmare, not to watch, as in the idea of being sort of trapped underground. I have this great fear of the tube, even though I use the tube. I don't mind the tube. It's just the idea of it getting stuck in a tunnel. It really bothers me. It's kind of that. I suppose it's just claustrophobia, and this just played massively into it. But what I did like about it was that it's just different. It's just felt very different. It felt like a different program. We kind of talk each week about different things, and quite often there's a similar, idea that runs through, or it's not really sort of treading new ground. But this feels like it really is. It feels quite gritty. It's quite cruel, and it plays on all of our fears, I think, and that's why it works. So actually, although it's not sort of something you'd necessarily think I'd enjoy, I think it's quite captivating.
Well, something that is, I suspect, very much in your wheelhouse on Netflix. It's the Bridgerton prequel, Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story. And here's a clip.
There is reason they wanted me. Why me?
Charlotte, but there are worse fates than marrying the King of England.
It is time we were united as a society. You will make lots of babies. As many babies as possible for my son.
So when I first heard that this was happening, I kind of, this past week, I thought, no, I just love Bridgerton so much. How can this be as good, and can it ruin it, or, why? And then I thought, no, put those aside and just get into it. And yeah, if you're a Bridgerton fan, you're going to absolutely love this. So this is a prequel. So this is set years before Bridgerton that we saw. And, Bridgerton has been enjoyed by so many people. Really colourful cast, just kind of breaks so many boundaries and barriers, which is absolutely excellent. And it's, there's eye candy for everyone in abundance, let's be honest. But then this is equally a period drama, clearly, and it's set before, but all it does is show us how we've got to Bridgerton, if you like. And so it focuses and is set around Queen Charlotte and King George and how they first found love, which, isn't really covered in Bridgerton at all. And we see Queen Charlotte coming over. It's an arranged marriage, and she comes over from Germany, and she's already, we've seen this in Bridgerton. Some of the girls, you'd imagine they just all fall in line, but they don't. They sort of push back on these ideals, even though, this was set mainly in the 18th century. And Queen Charlotte is one of them. And she finally meets the king as she's trying to escape over the walls to get out, and he stops her. And I think she realizes quite how attractive, or she doesn't realize quite how attractive he is until she comes face to face with him. And of course, as with Bridgerton, there's highs and lows, but I think what this does is explain everything, particularly the Charlotte and George part, but it explains how everybody fits and comes together. They went on to, I think they had 15 children. He had very ill health. And we know from Bridgerton that Queen Charlotte is quite the character. And I didn't at first match the two, but it's perhaps, how her life changed her as why we see her, now. Some of the older characters in Bridgerton also feature in this. But it's got exactly the same vibe as Bridgerton, the music, the warmth, the fun, the narrative. I just think it's great. And I think it's going to be, one that, again, everybody adores. Did you like it, Ian?
I did like it, and I wasn't I wasn't hugely into Bridgerton, not because I didn't think it was good. I didn't really get into the series. I watched a little bit of it at my sister's over Christmas. So I sort of approached this thinking, well, I'm not really a huge Bridgerton fan, but I thought it was great. Imagine a world, Hannah, where royalty have their life partners chosen for them because of their breeding potential. It couldn't happen in the modern day, could it? I joke, of course. So, yeah, this is very much the backdrop is that they need to produce an heir. So they're looking for a queen for King George who will bear lots of children. And that's the long and short of it. And that's why they've chosen young Charlotte. Her brother set up the match. And in episode 1, she doesn't want to go, but you see her travelling from Germany to England and being introduced at court, and she's almost treated like, they're buying a sort of piece of livestock or something. They're looking at her teeth. It's all pretty grim. She is great, I must say. India Amartifio, who plays Charlotte, and yeah, there's this great scene. No one will tell her what the king is like. She's saying what she likes to all of the sort of footmen and the ladies in waiting, and they won't say anything. So she's assuming that there's something awful about him, either his appearance or his personality. And as you say, there's this terrific scene where she's trying to escape just before the wedding's going to happen. And she meets the king, played by Corey Milcreast, I think that's how you pronounce his name, not realising who he is. And of course, he's a dreamboat. And you think, and what's quite interesting is that the king's mother, who's played by the brilliant Michelle Fairley, she invites a lot of the sort of Afro-Caribbean society to the wedding, so that because they do address this issue. Like when she first sees Charlotte, she kind of licks her thumb and tries to rub off some of the brown on her face. So the issue of the colour of her skin is touched upon, and so that's why she does this. So yeah, it's, as you say, it's got the thing where they do classical sort of Baroque adaptations of modern hit singles, which works really well. The costumes are incredible. The backdrop, pretty sure I saw Greenwich used as a filming location in this. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it, I must say. And as someone who was not a massive Bridgerton fan, I wasn't expecting to, but I very much did. Something slightly different now over on Disney Plus. This was available from this Tuesday, the 2nd of May. It's called A Small Light, and here is a clip.
I hear they're cracking down on the Jews. That must be scary.
We have to hide our allegiances, or else we're not going to make it.
Lee, what I'm asking you to do is dangerous. If you get caught, you could get arrested, or even worse. I need your help hiding my family. You need to take your time to think it through.
So I guess most of us feel we're pretty familiar with the Anne Frank story. Of course, she was a young girl who kept a diary while she was in hiding with her family in occupied Amsterdam from the Nazis during World War II. And in fact, you can visit the house where she hid if you go to Amsterdam. So she's, I guess, one of the best known victims of the Holocaust. What this focuses on is some of the people who helped to hide the Franks. So, starring in it, you have Belle Powley, who's great in this. It's an 8-parter, and she plays Miep Gies, who is an Austrian who, she has her own kind of slightly troubled backstory, and she was sent to live in Amsterdam, in Holland, because her mother was very impoverished. Anyway, she's a kind of bit of a giddy teenager. She likes drinking, dancing, meeting boys. She gets a job working for Anne Frank's father, Otto. Now, he is played by the brilliant Liev Schreiber, famous for things like Ray Donovan. And there's this really good setup. So his company makes something that is used in jam. If you're making jam, he makes this product that you need. I think it's pectin, I believe. So her first few days in the office, she can't understand why all he does is ask her to make jam every day she goes in. Anyway, she's a great character. We also see her meeting this rather bookish character called Yan, played by Joe Cole of Peaky Blinders fame. You've also got Andy Nyman, you will see in there. You've got Caroline Katz. So a good cast. Schreiber's particularly good as Anne Frank's father. He's very sort of softly spoken, thoughtful. They actually hid in a sort of secret annex, which was part of his office building, and Meep and her husband and other people would bring them food and kind of, warn them if people were coming to the building to keep quiet. So I found it incredibly moving, and I thought I knew a lot about the Anne Frank story, but this told me a great deal that I didn't. What did you think of this?
I agree. I think the Anne Frank story, you feel it, don't you? And I have visited where she lived in Amsterdam, and it's eerie, and everything around it is eerie, and I don't know, just sort of this sort of sense of awfulness kind of hits you, but also the bravery. And I think everyone knows the story. We're all taught it at school, but I think this sheds a very sort of different light on the story. And as you say, you learn more about it than you thought you knew everything, but you didn't. And I think it brings the characters to life because, of course, we know Anne through her diary, obviously, but this brings to life the characters a bit more, and it makes it feel very real. I kind of feel like it's one of those things that would really engage students, I suppose, when they're sort of teaching history and explaining the atrocities that went on. And that these are, because I think we think, it was in the olden days. It really wasn't that long ago. And not only was it not that long ago, these people were young, they had lives, and I suppose it's a human way of dealing with it. You just sort of shut it off because it's just so terrible what happened. But for me, this absolutely brought a whole new dimension to a story that I thought I already knew so well.
Well, we're going to finish off going back to Disney Plus for a feature film that arrived this Wednesday. It's already been out in cinemas. Now it's on Disney Plus. It's called Rya Lane, and here is a clip.
I'm going to meet my ex for the first time since the breakup.
And you're still calling it the breakup?
I thought we were fine. We were better than fine. We moved in together. We had Hamilton tickets.
It's a serious commitment.
Right.
So what happened?
She cheated on me with my best friend.
You cheated on Tom with him?
There's been a bit of a buzz around this film because it's a sort of rom-com that you'd expect the likes of some of the kind of the usuals, Hugh Grants and what have you, to be in those positions, and they're not. They've cast all black people, and it's a completely different slant on the kind of the whole Notting Hill ideal, because of course this is not set in Notting Hill. This is set in Peckham, and it's incredibly funny because it's sort of, I suppose, it stereotypes to a degree, but equally picks up on some of the things that, normal rom-com, everything's so sugar-coated, isn't it? And this just isn't. So it follows the story of this couple who actually meet while he's in the toilet crying, and this kind of ridiculously weird day that they have together, and whether they will, get together or won't they. They're both coming out of relationships that just finished, which they, are very upset about. They didn't want them to end, and so I suppose they're kind of consoling each other. The background is very, very bright in some of the area, but also quite grim in others. There's subtitles for some of the street speak. For me, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the whole thing, but it sort of took the mickey out of the rom-coms perhaps that we're used to, but yet made it very, very real. And it was really fun. And as I say, it's already, there's a lot of buzz around this, and is expected to do incredibly well. And as I say, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah, I did too. And I didn't bother going to see it when it was in the movies, even though Peckham and Brixton, where it's largely filmed, right on my doorstep. So I know all of these locations very well. But it was sort of getting, 3-star reviews and people saying, well, yeah, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't kind of life-changing. And I must admit, I wish I had seen it in the cinema because it's absolutely great. It's directed by Rain Alan Miller, and you can see that this is a film that has a real complete sort of vision. It's visually very striking, especially kind of the colour palette. The use of music is great. The way the camera moves is really interesting. And yeah, as you say, it's two people who, have had unhappy experiences in love. They meet in a toilet, actually, which is quite... So from the off, it's slightly different. And there's some great scenes. So one of the first things they do together... so it's Vivian Opara and David Johnson. They are playing Yaz and Dom. And they meet in an art gallery. The art gallery scenes are really funny. There's this artist whose his work is all sort of extreme close-up photographs of people's teeth and gums. So that's quite fun. Anyway, one of the first things they do is that he's going to meet his ex, who has cheated on him with his best friend, and they're going to have a sort of closure meeting, the three of them. And she thinks... she doesn't want him to do that on his own, so she kind of gate crashes. It's in this restaurant in Peckham, and that is a very funny scene. It's hilarious. So, yeah, I gotta say, I thought it was terrific. They're both very engaging, especially Vivian. I thought she was superb in this. And, yeah, it moves around. They go from place to place. They go to kind of a barbecue. There's a great scene where... It's very cleverly imagined. So when she's telling him the story of her relationship breakup, what they do is they set it as a play in a theatre, which she is acting in and acting out her relationship. And there are just lots and lots of different versions of him are in the audience. It's really imaginative. It's very clever. So yeah, I would say if you didn't see this at the cinema, check it out because it is really, really good. Now, we've got to that time, Hannah, where we find out what the heck you've been binging on this week.
Well, obviously BGT, but also Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, that it is a nightmare and there's a lot of swearing. How about you?
I caught the final episode of the very good Belfast set cop drama Blue Lights on BBC iPlayer. And if you haven't seen that, check it out. It is very, very good. Now, we've just got time to look ahead to next week's offering. So what's on the agenda, Brenda?
Well, the Muppets return as rock band Electric Mayhem get their very own show in the Muppets Mayhem on Disney+.
And Jennifer Lopez plays an assassin who comes out of hiding to save her daughter in The Mother on Netflix. So we look forward to those and more. But in the meantime...
keep watching!